Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, Prime Minister Netanyahu appears to have received enough votes and will, barring any unforeseen developments, be asked by the President of Israel to form the next government. The Israeli public went to the polls last week, and voter turnout was the highest since 1999. So Benjamin Netanyahu apparently is set to continue serving as Prime Minister and will launch negotiations to build a coalition.
Al Jazeera has confirmed the death of one of its embedded reporters in Syria. According to the Pan-Arabic news station, the reporter was shot 3 times by a sniper in the province of Dara. This is the second journalist to be killed in the Arab Republic in just 1 week. Christophe Delors, who is the head of the media watchdog RSF, said that his organization condemns the increasing threat to journalists who are oftentimes being targeted, and that Syria is now considered to be the world's most dangerous country for news providers of all kinds.
The Russian Emergencies Ministries has sent 2 planes to Lebanon to evacuate more than 100 Russian citizens from Syria. The Kremlin has been a strong supporter of the Assad regime since the uprising in Syria began 22 months ago, but this evacuation, coupled with recent diplomatic statements, seems to be a sign that Moscow is losing faith in Assad's ability to prevail. Russia's deputy foreign minister recently told the Russian news agency that the regime and government in Syria is losing control of more and more territory. He went on to say that, unfortunately, a victory of the Syrian opposition cannot be ruled out.
At least 81 people have been confirmed dead after al-Qaeda terrorists staged a bloody siege at a natural gas plant in the Sahara Desert of Algeria. According to reports, many of the bodies were badly disfigured, making it difficult to determine whether they were terrorists or hostages. The Algerian government has officially stated that 37 foreign hostages were killed in the standoff. U.S. President Barack Obama released a statement saying that this attack is yet another reminder of the threat posed by al-Qaeda and other violent extremist groups in North Africa.
A delegation of United States senators was in Jerusalem last week and met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss regional issues. Netanyahu told the group that building in Jerusalem is not the world's problem, but that a nuclear Iran is the world's problem. He went on to say that history will not forgive those who do not stop the Iranian nuclear program.
As international pressure mounts for Iran to halt its disputed nuclear development program, Tehran's delegate to the International Atomic Energy Agency defiantly said that the Islamic Republic will not stop uranium enrichment for even a moment. Ali Asghar Sultanieh's comments, which aired on Iranian state television, came just 2 days after senior investigators from the IAEA concluded intensive talks with the Iranians. Despite Tehran's clear lack of regard for the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the IAEA has agreed to hold another round of negotiations early next month.
Terrorists attacked a convoy of Lebanese parliament members demanding the release of Islamist prisoners jailed in Tripoli. The terrorists threw grenades at a convoy which carried the sports and youth minister, Faisal Karameh. 4 people were wounded in the attack.
Egyptian authorities have seized a truck loaded with over 1 ton of explosives in Suez. This is the 4th such discovery during the past 10 days, which has yielded more than 2.5 tons of explosives. Reports from Egyptian officials in the Suez area are conflicting. One claimed that the terrorists were attempting to ambush a tunnel in the area, while another stated that the explosives were en route to the Sinai.
Israeli security officials have arrested 2 Bedouins for plotting terror attacks against Israelis. The men confessed to planning to bomb the Beersheba Central bus station, as well as a plot to run over Israelis with a car. The 21 and 24-year-old brothers also admitted to planning to build and launch homemade rockets at Israelis. Both brothers were said to be influenced by jihadist websites on the internet, and one of the suspects reportedly volunteered to kill Israeli civilians on a Palestinian Islamic Jihad website.
A German court has convicted a bishop for inciting hatred by Holocaust denial. Bishop Richard Williamson openly denied events of the Holocaust during an interview with a Swedish television station in 2008. The 78-year-old Roman Catholic cleric was fined 1,800 euros for claiming that Jews were not murdered in gas chambers during the Second World War. This amount was significantly lower than the 6,500 euro that was requested by the prosecutor. Holocaust denial is considered a crime in Germany, and although the case took 5 years to prosecute, the bishop was eventually found to be guilty and fined for his offenses.
The European Parliament has adopted the observance of Holocaust Remembrance Day. Although Holocaust memorial services have been held in the EU Parliament for the past 7 years, they were not considered official events. Rabbi Menachem Margolin, Director General of the European Jewish Association, said, "The European institutions have the responsibility to increase education toward tolerance in all EU member states. Education is the key to preventing the reoccurrence of such acts of horror."
Freedom Watch, a U.S.-based watchdog organization, released its annual report last week stating that Israel is the only free country in the Middle East. The report, titled Freedom in the World 2013, rated countries based on open political competition, the climate of respective civil rights, the independent media. The report found that in most Middle Eastern countries there is limited respect for political rights and civil liberties, and in many cases, basic political rights are absent and civil liberties are widely and systematically denied. It said that the Middle East registered major declines, with a list of worsening countries that includes Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Oman, Syria, and the United Arab Emirates. Israel remains the region's only truly free country.
A human rights NGO in Yemen has appealed to the Yemeni government on behalf of the endangered Jewish community in that country. In 2007, an al-Qaeda-aligned anti-government militia forced the small Jewish community from their homes. Since then, the Yemen government has provided them with assistance, but that has recently been halted. The report demanded that the National Reconciliation Government restore the allocations and provide the Jews with housing and safe living, as they are considered to be displaced as a result of war. Most Yemeni Jews were brought to Israel in a mass immigration called Operation Magic Carpet, shortly after the foundation of the State of Israel. The few Jews who remained in Yemen have faced escalating persecution by the increasingly Islamic and militant population.
The United States government has officially requested the release of imprisoned American pastor Saeed Abedini. The 32-year-old Christian pastor, who is the married father of 2, was in Iran working to keep an orphanage that he runs operational. Abedini was arrested by Iranian authorities for his beliefs, and he now faces the death penalty. Tommy Viator, the spokesman for the United States National Security Council, released a statement saying that we remain troubled by the case of U.S. citizen Saeed Abedini, who was arrested more than 3 months ago on charges relating to his religious beliefs. We call upon Iranian authorities to release him immediately. Jordan Sekalo, the executive director of the American Center for Law and Justice, wrote, while the Obama administration's National Security Council has called for the immediate release of Pastor Saeed, it is disappointing that the State Department and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton remain silent, failing to condemn Iran's actions and call for Pastor Saeed's release. He went on to say that Pastor Saeed is an American citizen facing trial and an uncertain future, which could very well include the death penalty because of his religious beliefs. And that concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and Baruch Hashem, thank God, once again we've been rained out of our rooftop studio here in Jerusalem. My guest today is Tony Stone, director and founder of Team Support Ministry. Tony, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Tony, tell our viewers a little bit about what is Team Support Ministry?
Well, we were founded some 55 years ago, and for 55 years we've been involved in evangelism around the world. And in recent years, much more concentration on Israel, and that's the reason why we're in Jerusalem today.
Well, tell us a little bit about what are you doing here in Israel?
We came over originally for a conference, and that was the first 3 or 4 days of our visit. And then I've been catching up with contacts in the city and in other parts of the country.
Well, you're based out of England. How much a factor is Christian support for Israel in England today?
I would say, Josh, it's something that is increasing among Bible-believing Christians, giving great support to the land and much prayer for the nation and the people.
You know, we're seeing a lot of condemnation from the mainline churches in England for Israel. How does it differ, the support from the evangelical Bible-believing church vis-a-vis the mainline churches, and why is there that discrepancy?
I think it's a very clear division. As you said, among many of the mainline churches, they are not sympathetic always to Israel, whereas the Bible-believing evangelical people are very, very much involved in prayer for and support of Israel.
Has the Bible-believing Christian support for Israel been able to be translated into political support for Israel, or has it not permeated the political echelons?
Oh, it certainly has made some impact by writing, by phoning, by having different conferences. And so I would say, yes, there is some impact on the political, but the two things are definitely divided.
We're seeing a major rise in radical Islam in England. How has that affected your ability to operate as an organization and as just a Christian who believes in the Bible?
Oh, it hasn't affected our ability to do that. We are aware of a rising population of Islamic people, but we see that as a challenge to us as Christians to evangelize among them, and we're always looking for fresh opportunities. But it hasn't really made any big impact as far as our stance for Israel is concerned.
Do you think that the rise of radical Islam in England will affect political support for Israel? We've seen just recently a lot of condemnation from the British government about building in our capital, Jerusalem.
Yes, we're very aware of that. And one wonders personally how much they're pandering to the views of the Islamic group in the United Kingdom. But again, I say it doesn't change the fact that we believe our responsibility is to reach out to the Islamic people with the gospel. And in my mind, the political stance and the church's stance are two totally separate things.
We see the statistics, and we see that in Western Europe, there isn't really a rise of Christianity, whereas in Eastern Europe, there is this new revival. What do you think the difference is between Western Europe and Eastern Europe in this respect?
I feel very strongly about that, actually, because statistics are built up on the established churches, you know, the sort of 5 main Christian denominations. But in actual fact, the scene in the United Kingdom is absolutely thousands and thousands of small, new, often charismatic churches, and there is no way that they get into the statistics. And so as a traveling preacher, I'm encouraged by what is happening in the country, but it is not happening in the established church.
What can be done in the United Kingdom, including Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and England, in order to bolster a more pro-Israel voice?
Oh, I think we have got to speak out. We have got to be bold. We've got to be strong. For example, in our ministry, in Team Support Ministry, my colleagues and I, we travel the country talking on the subject of Israel. And really, it's an education program that they understand that the God of Israel is the God of the believer today. and that God still has such a purpose for this land. And so my time is taken up with pro-Israel traveling and talking.
Well, you're here now in Jerusalem for a conference supporting Israel. What is the point of the conference?
We came on this occasion to pray for Israel, and it's called the Women on the Wall, although men are very much invited as well. And so God was very good to us. We had one of the few fine days, and we were able to go up onto the wall and make a biblical proclamation over the city and to pray for current events that are happening here at this time. In fact, we prayed for rain, and if any prayer was answered, it certainly was this time.
Well, Tony, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
I want to say, first of all, that we need to be remembering that the God of Israel is the God of the whole world, and that the Christ that was crucified in this city was crucified for all. And we need to have just a love for the nation. We need to pray for Israel. We need to support Israel. We need to get involved with Israel. And on a personal note, having observed this week, again, and I come here regularly, this is the time to come and visit Israel and to stand with Israel. If ever they needed to know that believers around the world love them, this is the hour. And I would encourage you to come and to visit and support and stand in unity with our dear brothers and sisters among the Jewish nation.
Tony, thank you for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, shining light from Israel.
Modern transportation is driven almost entirely by conventional fuel. As a result, oil is considered the most strategic commodity in use today. Remove the fuel supply, and sophisticated economies will grind to a halt. And here lies the problem. Besides the fact that fossil fuel emissions are a major factor in the advancement of global warming, almost 80% of the world's crude oil reserves are situated in countries of the Middle East, all of which are undemocratic and are openly hostile to the West. They use the revenue they generate from sales to acquire weapons and sponsor terrorism. Moreover, every time one of the oil-producing countries wants to pressure the developed world, it cuts back production and causes gasoline prices to skyrocket. Not a healthy situation for a nation that needs both security and fuel at reasonable prices.
The world economy is strangled by oil prices. And without getting oil back in order, that is, getting oil down or eliminating oil, it will keep strangling the world economy.
This is a recent motor show in Beijing, China. China, followed by India, is today the fastest growing importer of petroleum, and in the not too distant future could be the world's largest consumer. US security officials have long said China's escalating thirst for fuel will drive it ever closer to terrorist-sponsoring governments like Iran, to such an extent that it will compromise US-China relations. And by the way, this is what commuters in Beijing have to endure on their roads. In some places, the pollution is so dense that visibility is restricted to less than 100 meters. In 2009, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced that Israel is taking the lead to help the world lose its dependence on oil.
We set a course for a 10-year program where we put between $40 and $50 million a year into research, development, support of fledgling companies, and most importantly of all is international cooperation, both on policy issues, technology issues, and explaining the importance of this.
Several universities, private companies and startups have been involved in alternative energy research for years. The Israeli electric car enterprise Better Place is one of the participants. Others have only just recently joined the race.
The idea is to create another startup nation, not just on ICT, but now on technologies to replace oil. And there's so many of them already on the way that we believe we can have an impact very quickly.
We believe that we can produce this oil, actually this finished product, between $35 and $40 per barrel. And today Brent crude is $115 per barrel. And with time, our costs will go down because it's technologically and R&D based, whereas conventional oils are based just on the available supply, which is short. Demand is going up because you have countries like China and India with a growing population wants to have cars, and the amount of available conventional oil is going down.
Yossi Hollander believes that for the short term, using natural gas for transport is the way to go.
Everybody always joked that Israel is the only place in the Middle East with no oil and gas. That joke is finally over. Israel has found significant amounts of natural gas in the Mediterranean. And the opportunity for Israel is to actually convert its fleet away from oil, its car fleet, its truck fleet, to natural gas or to byproducts of natural gas, for example, methanol.
The transportation experts say now is the time for the government to act. Once the decision is made, they say, within less than 10 years, the country's entire fleet of vehicles can be powered by electricity or by fuel derived from natural gas, and will prove to the world how quickly it can be done, and especially how economical it is.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
Have you ever wondered what happened to the lost 10 tribes of Israel? This is a question that has challenged Bible scholars and historians for centuries. Now, the Bible does tell us that as the Assyrian Empire came against the northern 10 tribes some 2,700 years ago, that there were members of the northern tribes who heeded the warnings of the prophets, and they fled south to Jerusalem and to the kingdom of Judea. Others who were taken into exile came back with Ezra and Nehemiah and rejoined the Jewish mainstream. And so we can say with confidence that the Jewish people we have with us today contain significant remnants of all 12 tribes. Yet there were many from the northern 10 tribes who were indeed lost to history, and the search for them goes on to this day. Now, the body that has the final say in determining who truly has Jewish ancestry are the chief rabbis of Israel who sit here in the great synagogue in Jerusalem.
In the late 1970s, a few individuals from a small group located in northeast India began to research the origins of their religious traditions and their ancestry. Their research led them to discover an ancestral connection to Israel. Under Persian rule, their ancestors traveled through the Silk Route to modern-day Afghanistan, Tibet, China, and finally to northeast India, in the midst of Myanmar and Bangladesh. This particular group, called the Bnei Menashe, or Sons of Menashe, are believed to be descendants from the lost tribe of Manasseh. In the early 1980s, members of the group made contact with an organization in Israel, expressing an interest in returning to their ancient homeland.
Recently, I was part of a delegation from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, which was privileged to welcome 53 members of the Bnei Menashe tribe home to Israel at Ben Gurion Airport. It was a remarkable experience, and what really stood out to me is the sense these people had that they were carrying the weight of so many generations that had longed to come home. They realized they had the privilege to be the ones to stand for the first time back in the land of Israel. It was a hope they had carried for generations. The Christian Embassy supports the return of the B'nai Menashe because we believe it is the incredible handiwork of God. The prophet Isaiah in chapter 43 promises, "I will bring your descendants from the east." For the 13 families that we recently welcomed home at Ben Gurion Airport, the long journey for them was finally over. But there are still 7,000 B'nai Menashe remaining in Northeast India who are longing to come home, and we've committed to help them.
The return of the B'nai Menashe, the sons of Menashe, to the land of Israel is one of the most exciting developments of our days. This is exactly what the Bible speaks about in Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 3, where God says He will bring back from captivity the sons of Israel, the house of Judah, back to their land to possess it. And we want to invite you to become part of this exciting end-time prophetic action of God and to place a financial seed into God's return of the chosen people to the land of Israel. Become a partner of the Christian Embassy and help us to bring the B'nai Menashe, the sons of Menashe, back to the land of Israel. We are your embassy here in Jerusalem. May the Lord bless you out of Zion.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rome.
And I'm Erin Viner reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all your Israel updates.